Welcome to the lecture on goods and services tax, the basics of taxable event and introduction to the concepts of supply. See, the concept of supply is very new in the GST era and it plays a very important role. Now, for every law, we have a taxable event or we call it as a nexus of the particular taxation. Even for GST, the supply becomes a taxable event. Now, what is basically a supply, a taxable event? So we need to refer to section 7 and 8 to understand the concepts of taxable event. So we have got six sub-classifications. The first one is supply with consideration in the course or furtherance of business. The second one is the import of services with consideration, either in the course or not in the course or furtherance of business. The third one is supply without consideration. The fourth is activities that are stated as supply of goods or services or both. Next is activities neither they are supply of goods nor supply of services. And finally we have got composite and mixed supplies. So these six items will be discussed in detail. First is, what is a taxable event? It is any transaction or an occurrence of any event which results in a tax consequence. See, because of this transaction or occurrence of an event, we need to pay tax. This is a foundation for any taxation system, this taxable event. In the GST law, the taxable event is supply. The word supply has taken out so many terms. In the earlier law, in the excise, we had manufacture. In the sales tax, we had sale. For services, we had rendering of service. We had purchase, entry into territory for entry tax. All these terminologies have been done away with and the concept of supply has been introduced in GST era. I think we'll be able to recall what is manufacture or sale or rendering of service, purchase, entry tax, octroi, etc. Now, all these have been subsumed under a single term called supply. Before moving into the supply, just for recapitalization, we will see 3 or 4 definitions. What is goods? Section 2 subsection 52 defines, it means every kind of movable property. It includes all movable property other than money and securities. I think we discussed in the earlier lecture what is auctionable claims. It also includes auctionable claims, growing crops, grass or anything attached to the part of the land which is agreed to be detached, which is agreed to be severed or separated from the land before supply or contract of supply. So here the concepts are, goods are to be movable property. Specific exclusion is money and securities. It includes auctionable claims and even the concepts of crops, grass or anything which is attached to the land. And these crops or grass, it should be severed before or it should be separated or detached from the land before the supply or the contract of supply. Who is a principal? A person on whose behalf an agent carries on the business of supply or an agent receives the goods or services or both. So here the agent can be a supplier of goods or services or both, or he can be even the recipient of goods or services or both. Now let us look into the term business. What is business? I think because earlier we discussed on the term business or in the course or in the furtherance of business. So we need to understand the business in terms of the original meaning what is assigned in the various acts. The first one is, it includes, here it is again an inclusive definition. It includes any trade, commerce, manufacture, profession, vocation, adventure, wager or any other similar activity, whether or not it is for a pecuniary benefit, for some other purpose or for some closely related purpose or not. So that is called as pecuniary interest. So here what is trade? Buying and selling, commerce, all business activities or all any related activities, manufacture. So you convert your raw materials into finished goods or into some other form utility is being converted. Profession, examples of professions are your doctors, all engineers, your architects, chartered accountants, management consultants are professionals. Next is vocation. See, vocation and profession are slightly different. What is basically a vocation is, normally we have a study called vocational study. Like even in the schools, even in the academic curriculum, we call it as a vocation. Then what is the difference between the vocation and the profession? See, vocation, the original meaning for the word vocation, a strong feeling of suitability for a particular career or an occupation. So maybe any trade or profession in a very generic nature, which does not require any special skill or special certification, we can call it as a vocation. Adventure, like even your adventure transactions are covered under business. Wager or any other similar activity. Next is any activity or transaction in connection with, in first is in connection with or incidental or ancillary to the business what is stated above. The third one is any activity or transaction in the nature of the first one, whether or not you have got a volume, frequency, continuity, like regularity. See, if you carry on trade even for one time, yes, it is trade, it is a business. Even you carry on an adventure for a particular maybe a duration, it is that. Whether it is recurring or not, what is a quantum, what is a volume, it doesn't matter here. And supply or acquisition of goods including capital assets and services in connection with commencement or closure of business. So like whenever you commence a new business, whatever assets you acquire, capital assets, and at the time of dissolution or closure of business, the disposal of those capital assets are also business. Next is provision by a club, an association, society, or any such body for a subscription or any other consideration, even for a lump sum subscription, like subscription, or of the facilities or benefits to its members, as the case may be. So the club associations, example is your social clubs, your gymkhana club, maybe your sports or entertainment club. So they charge a subscription from you. What is the facility they give? You can use the services. You can avail all the benefits that are available with the particular association. So it is also a business. Next is admission for a consideration of persons to any premises. You charge entrance fee or admission fee in any entity or in any place, then it is to be considered as a business. Services supplied by a person as a holder of an office which has been accepted by him in the course or furtherance of his trade, profession or vocation. So for example, an auditor who has established an office, and whatever services he supply, either along with practicing the scores or in addition or as a value addition or ancillary, incidental, by whatever means you call, those are covered under business. Activities of race club, including by way of totalizer or a license to bookmaker, or activities of a licensed bookmaker in such club. See here, a race club. The race club can be for any races. So it includes the activities of a bookmaker or a licensed bookmaker in such club. Let us just remember it for the time being. We will discuss on this provision when I come to the time of supply and the place of supply. So any activity or transaction which is undertaken by the central government, a state government, or a local authority in which they are engaged as public authorities. For example, even the normal trade activities which are undertaken by the government, the local authority, municipality, all these are covered under the term business now. Now the important definitions, section 7 speaks about meaning and scope of supply. Section 8 speaks about taxability of composite and mixed supplies. Under section 8 we have got schedule 1, 2, 3. So activities which are to be treated as supply even if made without consideration. Here schedule 1 specifically speaks about any supply made without consideration. Schedule 2, no, it speaks about or activities or transactions which are treated as supply of goods or as supply of services. Schedule 3 is a negative list. So activities or transactions which shall be treated neither as a supply as of goods nor as supply of services. So what is not a supply of goods or services is given in schedule 3. That is your negative list. What is taxable event? Section 7. So we have got subsection 1, 2, 3 here. So we need to understand in the very direct context of the meaning, the word supply. It says all forms of supply of goods or services or both, such as sale, transfer, barter, exchange, license, rental, lease, disposal. Even in the earlier lecture, we have discussed the meaning for these terms, and it is made or agreed to be made for a consideration by a person in the course or furtherance of business. So first one is your generalized transactions. Your sale, transfer, barter, exchange, license, rental, lease, disposal, whatever by name you call it, all these are covered under section 7 subsection 1. The next part, import of services for a consideration. Here the first point was in the course or furtherance of business, that is it should be only for business purpose or in the furtherance or business. The second one, import of services for a consideration, either you take it in the course or the furtherance of business or not. Both the situations are covered here for import of services for a consideration. And then the third classification says the activities which are given in schedule 1, either what is schedule 1? Anything made without a consideration, that will be deemed as supply. So all these are covered under subsection 7 subsection 1 for the term supply. Now subsection 1a is substituted here, where certain activities or transactions constitute a supply in accordance with the provisions of supply subsection 1, the earlier 3 points. They shall be treated as supply of goods or services as referred in schedule 2. What is schedule 2? Like your schedule 2 speaks about your activities of supply of goods or services. So if you find any transaction falling in any of the above categories, it shall be treated as your schedule 2 transactions. That is what subsection 1a speaks here. Subsection 2, it says notwithstanding anything containing the subsection 1, activities or transactions specified in schedule 3 or such activities or transactions undertaken by central government, a state government or a local authority in which they are notified as public authorities based on the recommendations of the council, it is notified, and it shall be treated neither as supply nor goods or nor supply of services. So this speaks about the negative list. See, the negative list is schedule 3 and also the transactions which are undertaken by the central government, state government or any local authority. The public transactions are where they are engaged as public authorities and it is notified by the government on the recommendations of the GST council. So they are not considered as supply of goods or nor supply of services. Now section 7 subsection 3 says that the government on the recommendations of the council, see not covered in subsection 1 or subsection 2, subsection 3 says the transactions that are to be notified or treated as supply of goods and not supply of services, or it will not be taken as supply of goods, but it will be taken as supply of services. It will be specifically notified by the government under subsection 3. Now let us look into schedule 1. Activities to be treated as supply even if made without consideration. no, there is no consideration. We normally say in the business, no consideration, no contract. So even those cases we will take it as supply. First one is permanent transfer or disposal of business assets where input tax credit has been availed on such assets. So when you transfer your business assets permanently or at the time of disposal of such assets, provided if you have availed the ITC, input tax credit on those assets, then the disposal part or your permanent transfer part will be considered as supply. Even there is no, even if you don't have any consideration. Next is supply of goods or services or both between related persons or between distinct persons as specified in section 25 when made in the course or furtherance of business. So when you give a supply of goods or services to between the related persons or distinct persons, again we'll be discussing who is a related person, who is a distinct person. Now how should we differentiate in the subsequent lectures? The third one is supply of goods by a principal to his agent, where the agent undertakes to supply goods on behalf of the principal. Next is by an agent to the principal, to his principal, where the agent undertakes to receive such goods on behalf of the principal. So the supply of goods between principal and agent is also being to be taken as supply only. Next is import of services by a person from a related person or from any of his other establishments outside India in the course or furtherance of business. So this is a normal case, import of services by a person from a related person. It can be individual or business entity form from any establishment which is outside India. If it is happening in the course or in the furtherance of business, we will take it as supply. Now we will recap what is supply. Your supply starts, it includes supply for consideration in the course or furtherance of business, section 7 subsection 1a. Next is importation of services for consideration whether or not in the course or furtherance of business. Third is supply made without consideration, 7 subsection 1c plus your schedule 1. And then activities to be treated as supply of goods or supply of services, sections 7 subsection 1a plus your schedule 2. It does not include, the exclusion is your negative list, section 7 subsection 2 plus your schedule 3. So this is the entire structure of your supply. Now schedule 2. What is to be treated as supply of goods or supply of services? First is transfer. Any transfer of title and goods, it is a supply of goods. So normally when you transfer goods, you sell under barter or whatever system it may be. If there is a title transfer in the goods, yes, it is supply of goods. Any transfer of right in goods or of undivided share in goods without the transfer of title thereof, it is a supply of service. So your lease, all your right to use of assets will be covered under the point here. Third one is any transfer of title in goods under an agreement which stipulates that the property in goods shall pass at a future date upon payment of full consideration as agreed. So we can bring our installment transactions here. So there is an agreement, clear agreement. It states that the property in the goods shall pass to the recipient on a future date. That is, he'll have to fulfill the payment of the full consideration as agreed. So that is also to be covered under the term transfer. Second one is land and buildings. So for land and buildings, the transfer of land and buildings is not covered under GST for the time being. But any lease, tenancy, easement, license to occupy, it becomes a supply of service. Next is any lease or letting out of the building, including a commercial, industrial or residential complex. So if you lease out any of these type of property, commercial, industrial or residential complex, for what? For a business or a commerce, either wholly or partly is a supply of services. See, when you give a residence, your residential building for a person, for his family residence, then the concept of GST is not attracted. Whereas you give your the residential complex as a guest house for which you charge a rent, then GST is applicable on such letting out. Treatment or process, any treatment or process which is applied to another person's goods is a supply of service. Transfer of business assets. So whatever is forming part of the assets of a business, if it is transferred permanently or it is disposed under the directions of the persons who is carrying on the business, and the business no longer requires these assets, if it is transferred for a consideration or not for a consideration, then that transfer or disposal will be taken as a supply of goods made by the person. Next is the second point says, under the direction of the person who is carrying on the business, the goods which are held or used for the purpose are put to any private use or used, or it is made available to any person for use for any purpose other than the business. Either you take a transaction consideration or not, the usage or making available of such goods becomes a supply of service. For example, you have got a business assets. Those business assets, with the permission of the management or the person who is carrying on the business, it is held for the purpose of the business. But here it is put to the private use, and for the private use, either you charge a consideration or you don't charge a consideration. So we'll have to value that and charge GST on that as supply of services. The next one is where any person ceases to be a taxable person. Any goods forming part of the assets of any business carried on by him shall be deemed as a supply by him in the course or furtherance of the business immediately before he ceases to be a taxable person, unless the entire business is transferred to another person as a going concern, or the business is carried on by a personal representative who is deemed to be a taxable person. So here, if you dispose of your business, so again the disposal will attract a GST here. Now what is supply of services? The examples of supply of services are renting of immovable property, construction of complex building, civil structure or part thereof, including a complex or a building which is intended for a sale to a buyer, wholly or partly, except where the entire consideration has been received after the issue or issuance of completion certificate, where required by the competent authority after its first occupation, whichever is earlier. See, it appears very complex. Here it's very easy. So the complex building structure, whatever is being sold, it will attract GST. What is the condition? The issuance of completion certificate and the grant of approval by the appropriate authority. Like now we have been seeing a lot of hoardings, the GST on the flats, no GST on the particular flats which were approved by before 2017. So those transactions are covered under this provision. Next is temporary transfer on permitting the use or enjoyment of any intellectual property, like for example the license of patent are transferred, the trademark, or when you charge some consideration, then it is attracted under GST. Again, the development, design, programming, customization, adaptation, upgradation, enhancement, implementation of information technology software, that is the software development, it is again brought under the purview of supply of services. Next is agreeing to the obligation to refrain from an act or to tolerance of an act, that is forbearance of an act, is also covered under supply of services. The transfer of the right to use any goods for any purpose, maybe for a specific period or not for a specific period, for cash, deferred payment or other valuable consideration, they are covered as supply of services. Now, what is a composite supply? I think mixed supply and composite supply we have already dealt in the earlier lecture, so we will just omit for the time being. We will go to the next concept here. Schedule 3, your negative list, which are not treated as supply of goods nor as services. First one is services by an employee to the employer in the course or in the relation of his employment. Your employment contracts are taken away from GST. Services given by any court or tribunal established under any law for the time being in force. So the services which are offered by the court or any tribunal or a judicial authority, it is not under GST. The third one is the functions performed by MPs, MLAs, your member of panchayat, member of municipalities, or your local body, your councillors, whatever services they render to the government or to the local authority, it is not service. The duties performed by any person who holds any post in the pursuance of the provisions of the constitution in that capacity. A constitutional authority is the president, vice president of the country, governor of state. So they are like whatever services they render, it is not covered under the GST. The duty is performed by any person as a chairperson or member or director in a body established by central government, state government, or local authority, who is not deemed as an employee before the commencement of this clause. See, there are certain boards which are appointed by the government in pursuance of certain requirements. So there are certain persons who are deputed as chairperson or member, like your public service commission, your union public service commission, your state public service commissions, your university grants commission. So all these bodies are statutory in nature. So if you have a person who is being appointed there and services are rendered by him, then GST will not be attracted. The services of funeral, burial, crematorium or mortuary, including transportation of the deceased. So the final rights, what is given to a deceased person, are completely excluded. Even in the earlier laws also it was not covered. Your sales tax or service tax, it was specifically excluded. The sale of land subject to your provision B of paragraph of schedule 2, that is sale of building. Auctionable claims other than lottery, betting and gambling. Auctionable claims are specifically excluded for with certain conditions. Now what is supply? It includes a sale, transfer, barter, exchange, license, rental, lease or disposal for a consideration in the course or furtherance of business. Now what is a consideration? It can be in payment in money or money's worth, or it can be monetary value of any act for doing activity or for forbearing activity. So it can be by the recipient or by any person, but the subsidy given by the central or state government will be excluded. So the payment or money like money is worth, the deposit will be considered as a payment when the supplier applies such deposit as consideration for the said transaction. So this is your brief recapitalization. Next is your course and in the course and furtherance of business. So first one, any trade or commerce or manufacture or profession, vocation, even if you don't have any monetary benefit, whatever activity that is incidental or ancillary to the stated business transactions, like it does not matter about the volume or continuity of the business. Next is supply or acquisition of goods, including capital goods and services, either whatever supply you acquire at the time of commencement of business or at the time of closure or disposal of the business. Next is provision of facilities by the club or association, like what is offered to the members for consideration, admission for consideration to any premises, servicer as a holder of office, what is accepted in the course and furtherance of trade or business, activity of a race club, including the way of totalizer or a license to bookmaker. The activities of a licensed bookmaker is being covered. Next is any activity which is given by the government or local authority as a public authority. These are all the exclusions for business. The inclusions or the coverage for the business. So I'll hope to meet you again in the detailed provisions with regard to the elements of supply. Thank you so much.